The first few days of Battlefield 2042 have been quite a roller coaster. I went from an abysmal launch day where I nearly couldn't play at all to kind of feeling indifferent playing the new all-out warfare and hazard zones to finally feeling like I see the true potential of this game and it's glorious. As I record this, I just had perhaps the most fun session of Battlefield in the almost 20 years that I've been playing this franchise, and I'll explain why in a second. So let's first talk about launch day for early access players. Coming from playing quite a bit of the beta, I was very nervous about day one to say the least. DICE had some significant work to do to fix up a game with a lot of potential but also a lot of serious issues. Unfortunately, my first day was an utter disaster trying to play. Starting off on the first time I tried to load it up, I couldn't even set the right resolution for my PC. I was capped at way below my monitor's max resolution. Then I tried to set up my controls and keybinds. Well, the mouse binds weren't working at all and every single input from my mouse was set to mouse 5 automatically, with no way to fix it or even to unbind them unless I quit the game, went into the config files, and deleted all of my saved settings. Then I'd have to start all over again and rebind every single thing again from scratch. Not a great start. I was basically unable to use my mouse for anything other than aiming and shooting for the first couple of days. Then when I finally got into some games, the gunplay felt, well, very weird. Assault rifles, or at least the ones I have access to, seem to have kind of an arbitrary spray pattern and wild inaccuracy. This is to the point where I felt more confident in a mid-range duel using an SMG instead of an AR. I'm not sure exactly what changed here since the feel of BF4 with these, but wow, they're very different and it's going to take me a while to get used to the feel of these. To add some gasoline to the fire, the game performance, at least on PC, is pretty abysmal right now. I have a fairly high-end PC running an i7-8700K and a 3090 graphics card, and I was struggling to maintain a steady even 70 to 80 frames. Friends of mine with lower-end systems had a much worse time, some of them having huge performance drops down into the even 30 FPS range. Even on my PC with a 3090, there's a huge amount of micro-stuttering and mega frame drops. This often makes the aiming feel really bad, especially with 128 players. On top of this, and perhaps related, it feels like there's some really weird input lag with the mouse causing even more weird aiming issues. And according to friends of mine on Twitter, I'm not alone in feeling this way. This is all before even mentioning the design decisions like specialists, which we will get into in a second. I will say that so far, sniping in the new mode feels pretty good, which is important to me since I really spend a lot of time sniping in Battlefield games. Once I got the feel for the bullet drop and the timing, I was actually having a lot of fun. The maps are so huge that you do have to lead your target quite a bit, and I'm curious to try out some of the other snipers as I unlock them. They do seem like a lot of fun. That beautiful headshot sound though, wow, that's satisfying, especially when you're doming someone from 600 meters away. I haven't had much time to use the DMRs and the LMGs yet, but from what I've seen, they're pretty powerful, especially in mid-range. I feel like there's actually quite a bit of weapon balancing that needs to be tuned up in the coming weeks. There's two major things that really irk me with the way that weapons feel right now. The first one is the very slow ADS speed with that weird blur that happens when you start to aim down sights. Maybe this is more realistic, but wow, do I hate this. It's just awful feeling compared to past Battlefield games, and I hope that there's some way to turn this off entirely or at least dramatically reduce this effect in the future. The gunplay is a huge reason why I've always loved Battlefield games, and this just feels completely terrible and it really hurts the smoothness of getting into fights. The other thing that absolutely drives me nuts is that when you spawn in, every single freaking time, the soldier decides to check out their rifle skin right before you can aim and shoot. I'm not sure exactly why this can't be done back in the base before you deploy, but apparently the best time to check your weapon is right when you spawn in and have 3 people shooting at you. Seriously, I can't stress enough how incredibly annoying this mechanic is, and I hope it gets removed very quickly. I've already lost count of the number of stupid deaths that I've had because I spawned in on a fairly hot point and I couldn't fight back while my soldier decided to check out his weapon. DICE, please, please, please get rid of this stupid mechanic. Like many other players this week, I've had constant server disconnect issues. I would launch up a game, everything would look good, and then I'd get kicked out right before it would start. I heard that turning off crossplay settings would fix this, and it did for one game, and then it was right back to disconnecting even more. Today, I played a long session with friends where one of us would crash or get disconnected from the group basically every single map. And seemingly, rejoining a party doesn't do anything. Every time I did this, I'd be stuck in a 1 out of 1 queue for several minutes where nothing would happen, and then it would finally tell me that the party leader needed to pick an activity. Meanwhile, all of my friends were still in the same match with seemingly some spots available. The only way to fix this issue for us was for everyone to leave the session, reform the party, and then launch a fresh game. This is less than ideal when one of us was crashing or disconnecting basically every single map. There's definitely some work to be done in this department. As far as the actual game modes are concerned, there's 3 major offerings on the table. There's All-Out Warfare, which consists of both Conquest and Breakthrough. Hazard Zone is sort of like a light version of Escape from Tarkov as sort of a survival extraction battle royale hybrid. And then there's Portal. You can maybe guess which of these three has me believing this will become the best Battlefield game ever created. All-Out Warfare feels like it has a lot of potential, but at the time of this video, the performance here is also by far the worst, particularly on certain maps in Breakthrough with 128 players. From what I've seen, things are a little bit better on PS5, and I'm really hoping that a day one patch or at least a near future performance boost will optimize the experience for PC. Older Battlefield games have always run really great on my system, and I'm hopeful that this poor performance for BF 2042 is just a phase at launch. Let's be honest, Battlefield is not exactly renowned for having perfectly clean launches anyway, so no big surprise here. I still remember how much of an utter disaster BF4 was when it first came out, but over time that actually turned into one of my favorite Battlefield games, so I'm hopeful. The specialists in All-Out Warfare feel kind of chaotic. You have 128 people zipping around up to the top of buildings, gliding from tornadoes with a wingsuit, wall hacking each other, and so on. This is definitely a huge departure in the feel from the classic Battlefield class system, and honestly, I'm not really sure how I feel about it yet. I'll give them some praise for trying something new, but I just feel like overall the specialist system doesn't really lead to the general sense of teamwork that the old system provided with its structure. Hopefully as the game evolves this will change, but for now it feels like an enormous free-for-all and I'm kinda missing the teamwork feeling of the past games. On the bright side, I actually think the maps are pretty cool and the scope of them is just mind-boggling. It's wild playing some of these enormous scenarios with such a huge scale. I'm really hoping we get some big performance boosts to fully enjoy playing on them. If we can't get better performance though, I'm kind of on the fence if the 128 player upgrade was actually worth it for this mode. Many fights still feel like you're just battling a small amount of players because they're spread so thinly across these huge maps. In reality, the number of players often doesn't really seem to make a huge difference for me. In Portal though, that's a completely different story which I'll talk about very soon. The vehicle balance in All-Out Warfare seems so off right now. I can't even imagine how they thought that Super Hokum attack chopper thing was okay as it is. That has to be one of the most powerful vehicles in the history of Battlefield. But it's not actually just the sky that's getting dominated by vehicles. Airboats are unreal right now. I'm guessing you've probably seen the clips where they're straight up driving up a building somehow. Who knows how that works, but even on the ground they're just crazy strong. I played a full game in one with my friend Zach and we were nearly unkillable with him driving around and me gunning. It was some of the freest kills I've had all week. I really hope they find the right balance with vehicles and make them a threat but not completely oppressive. I haven't had a ton of time to spend with Hazard Zone yet, but so far I'm not really seeing a huge appeal for this mode. It feels like the economy of buying items doesn't really have the right risk to reward balance yet, but again, I haven't put that much time in here, so I think it's premature for me to make that call. My biggest complaint about the mode is actually the setup of the gear regarding the gadgets that you use to locate the data drives. In an organized squad, it seems like it would make sense for only one player to run that gadget, while the rest of the team would buy more useful things. But then, one player is stuck being the designated data drive finder, which seems like a really lame role. I feel like this gadget should just be intrinsic for everyone with the kit and allow everyone to buy whatever gadgets they want for both of the other slots. It's also very weird fighting AI bots in this mode. I feel like it would be much more compelling if it was only other real players like any of the other big battle royale games. Overall, it's a nice offering in the total package, but I just don't see it necessarily driving a whole lot of sales unless they make some big improvements to the mode over time. And finally, we get to what's made me completely fall in love with this game starting today. Battlefield Portal. When you first load it up, you see a few pre-configured options like highlights from 1942, Bad Company 2, or Battlefield 3. But the real value here comes when you start playing the community created modes. Mark my words, this is going to get better and better over time as players invent more amazing ways to play. Even in the preset modes, I was having a blast playing. My personal Battlefield career started mostly with Battlefield 2 and I didn't get a whole lot of time with 1942 back in the day. But playing the 1942 remastered maps with the same old classes and weapons but in a new way is just amazing. The maps are truly beautiful and they look so good on this engine. Sniping in particular with the Kar 98 was making me smile from ear to ear. I literally could have played this all day long. But then it was time to hop over to Rush on Bad Company 2 where I got to use many of my old favorite weapons like the Gold Magnum. This felt so nostalgic, playing on maps like Eureka Harbor but with modern graphics. Truly a great experience. I had a lot of fun playing Battlefield 3 as well, and it was one of my favorite all-time games, but my jaw actually hit the floor on my first session playing the user-generated modes. My friends put us in a server with Battlefield 3 guns, but every map was enabled and we had 128 players. I can't even begin to explain the delightful chaos that was about to ensue. We first played a game on no char canals. This was like the best parts of the old meat grinder scenarios like Operation Locker or Metro, but way out in the open with chaotic battles happening literally everywhere that you would look. Aside from the frame drops associated with having so many players in close quarters, this was the start of some of the most fun I've ever had in Battlefield since I started playing so many years ago. Everywhere you turned, you could instantly get into a crazy fight. At one point, I dropped a tug system behind a rock and I was getting spotting rewards so fast I thought it was going to actually crash my game. With a glint from a sniper scope, you'd have the entire server aiming at you in just a second, but with a 4x scope, I could peek out and get headshot after headshot and I was just having a blast. My friends were in disbelief at how insanely crazy this felt to play. This was the reason Portal was built, and we realized that we had only barely even scratched the surface of its true potential. Next up in our session was LL main with the same scenario. While No Char was more like a close range meat grinder, this was all out war on an epic scale. It truly felt like we were in a war movie. At every distance there was someone to fight. Across the map at the top of the mountains there was a legion of enemy snipers to pick off. A little bit closer, soldiers were rushing towards us wave after wave after wave. And right in our faces, we had the front lines with the brave kamikazes who were bold enough to storm right into our base of 64 enemy players. It was truly madness. This is also where I first felt the greatness of the new weapon customization plus system. Although it's certainly janky in setting it up, and I do hope they make some big UI improvements soon, the fluidity of how you can use the system in battle is just amazing. Using my M98B sniper, I'd slap on the 4x scope for fighting close quarters in the front lines, and then I'd switch to the 12x to counter-snipe the enemies all the way across the map sitting on top of the mountains, and then I'd swap back to the 8x to take on the mid-range guys who were pushing towards us. For the first time, I felt like I finally understood why this system was created in the first place and the gameplay loop that it enables. This actually solved one of the biggest issues in past Battlefield games that I never had really thought much about. So often in a game, I would set up with a long-range sniper to get hits on enemies way across the map, but then all of a sudden I'd feel worthless in close quarters unless I could hit every shot with my sidearm. Or I'd put on a 4x scope, but then it was nearly impossible for me to take on enemies who were 400 meters away across the map. So then I would have to die and redeploy with a new setup. Now though, I can instantly swap to whatever setup makes the most sense for the current situation on the fly. It's truly amazing. I do think they can definitely make choosing which attachments go into your plus system way smoother in the menus, but for now I'm okay with the jankiness as I learn when and how to use each option. It's almost like another level of a skill curve built right into the game. After an insanely fun time on LL main, the next map up was Eureka Harbor, still with 128 players. Just wow, what an experience. After a valiant effort, we lost the first set of points and then we were pushed back to the next control zone. That's when we said to each other, oh. We were at the bottom of a giant hill with enemy snipers on every single high ground spot. They were taking up the top of buildings, alleyways, running down the middle into the side flanks. It was unbelievable. Enemies were everywhere, just like a scene out of Black Hawk Down or something. Once again, here I was rapidly switching my scope options. I was using the 4x scope for the close range kills and then swapping to the 8x for the guys on top of the hill. It was just so fluid and addictive. I could play this way all day. In fact, I'd probably still be playing if I wasn't taking a break to make this video. Even in my limited time playing Portal so far, I can already see that it's putting together all the best parts of Battlefield history. There's even a full logic editor to create basically anything you can imagine. I truly can't wait to see what crazy scenarios the community comes up with over the next few months. If you have any cool ideas for game modes, let me know in the comments and also join my community Discord server so we can try them out together. I want to wrap this up with a few closing thoughts and requests. One big complaint that I've seen overall from the non-Portal modes is the lack of weapons, and I get it, there's not as many as I would like either. But Battlefield games always add more and more of these weapons over time, and with the current state of balance, I would rather them get that right first before adding a ton of more variables to somehow come to an equilibrium with. Another pain point I've felt with friends is a limit to only 4 players in a pre-made group. Maybe this is for balance reasons, but it would be so nice to launch a game with more than 4 of us, especially when there's 128 players in a server. Battlefield is always best with friends, and it's a bummer making people sit out or wait for a turn to play with the group. For now, the custom Portal servers seem like a good solution to at least get everyone into the same game, but ideally I'd like to see more than 4 players in a squad, and if we can't do that, at least have bigger groups and somehow split into multiple squads. The scoreboard thing is really weird to me. I don't see the harm in being able to see my own kills and deaths relative to the whole rest of the server. It's nice to know how you're doing, and I wish we at least had a toggle where you could switch between the new modern scoreboard view and the legacy style. Team voice chat is apparently coming soon from what I've read, but that will be a big help when you're not playing in a coordinated squad. Also, where is the all chat? Maybe I'm old school with this, but I miss being able to see the trash talk from team to team across the server. Sure, give us an option to disable it, but come on, this should be something that's enabled if we want to see it. And the last thing on my list is the incessant use of cutscenes between every single thing in the game. Why do we need to have so many cutscenes on match start, match end, and the menus? Maybe it's just me getting picky, but man, I miss the simplicity of the older games. All in all, I'm actually having a lot of fun playing Battlefield 2042. The first day was very rough, and honestly, I was a little depressed about it, but every day after that has become better and better. For me, after today, Portal alone is probably worth the price of the whole game, and I can see myself sinking a crazy amount of hours into these custom modes. If you like this video, maybe subscribe and also drop a like. It's free to do and it helps my channel get found by more awesome people. And if you like this video, check out my recent one comparing every past Call of Duty versus Battlefield game in a head-to-head matchup. It's the video on the top right of your screen and also linked in the description.